Namaskar. Welcome to the 7th edition of our special series on India-UN partnership to mark 75th anniversary of United Nations. Listeners may recall, India has been one of the founding members of the world body. Today, we are observing UN Day to mark its 75th year since inception. UN Day marks the anniversary of the United Nations and the UN Charter, which came into effect since 1945. Well, it comes at a time when the world is facing a great disruption in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic with severe economic and social ramifications. Yet, it's also a reminder that there is an opportunity for positive changes and transformations. We have with us Renata Desalegn, UN Resident Coordinator in India, to share her insights into how effective UN has been as an organization in the global arena. Welcome, Ms. Renata Desalegn.
Thank you so much, Atul. Great to be here.
Listeners, I will just introduce you in a little bit details about how important has been the profile of Ms. Renata Desalegn. Ms. Renata Desalegn has been with the United Nations for over 3 decades in Africa and Asia. Prior to her current assignment as UN Resident Coordinator in India, she was a senior fellow at the Oslo Governance Center at UNDP in Norway. Ms. Desalegn has worked as UN Resident Coordinator and UNDP Resident Representative in Bhutan, Bangladesh, China, and Myanmar for over 15 years. Her repertoire includes the works in the field of good governance and poverty reduction at the UN in Mali, Laos, and in New York. She holds a master's degree in public administration from Howard University, a Master of Arts from Columbia University, and a Bachelor of Music from the University of Ottawa. Quite a varied profile, Ms. Renata.
Yes, thanks so much. So is the UN a very varied organization.
Okay, at the outset to say so, congratulations on the Platinum Jubilee, as we say about the UN. It has really been a landmark feat for United Nations in the 75th year since its inception. The world body has come a long way. It has been virtually operating in every sphere of life for the welfare of humanity. Can you summarize the key achievements of UN over the years?
And firstly, the UN is a very big and very complicated organization. We cover a huge range of very, very different issues from nuclear proliferation to nutrition. And we also have a very broad set of stakeholders, governments, of course, because we are an intergovernmental body, but also we outreach and work with civil society and with the private sector. Also inside the UN, we have a huge number of moving parts. There are over 50 distinct UN agencies, funds, and programs around the world. And that's not even counting the main bodies of the United Nations, like the General Assembly, Security Council, and other councils and commissions. And secondly, the UN was established with quite a few contrasting and sometimes even contradictory characteristics. For example, the UN was established with, it basically was established as a bold experiment in global governance, but it was not given the powers to actually be a global government. All those powers remained with the member states. The dominant organizing principle in today's multilateralism remains the sovereignty of member states. So we're still in what I would call a global governance light phase of multilateralism. And thirdly, the UN was given a huge number of crucial global mandates and issues to work on, but without the needed resources to, achieve the expected results. So all of this leads to some misunderstandings and sometimes even frustrations. And it's not, a surprise that, at the one and the same time, the UN is both ahead of its times, with its aspirational norms and values, and at the same time behind the times, with inadequate funding, resources, etc.
No, you rightly summed up in terms of the context that, the issue of multilateralism as a major issue in which a lot of headway has been made up with the help of UN, and it has played a stellar role with many countries in this region as well. We are talking about some of the achievements of UN. How effective has been it as an organization over the years?
Well, the UN established basically fundamentally to prevent a third world war. It was, established in the ashes of the Second World War, and the international community had had enough, and there was a strong desire not to go there again. And we can say in the 75 years since the establishment of the UN, there has not been a third world war. We have seen regional crises, and they've even risen in various parts of the world, but interstate conflicts have declined, and there's been no third world war since the UN was established. So that's not a small accomplishment. Yes. I would say also that the UN enabled member states to elaborate a very robust and comprehensive body of international law. If you just take, for example, in the human rights field, in addition to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which still rings aspirational these days, and the 2 covenants that go with it, plus some 80 treaties and declarations that have been signed around it, we now have a very, very solid set of international standards for global conduct. Third is decolonization. I know that, dates us because people don't really think much about decolonization anymore, but it was the UN that pushed for and oversaw the decolonization of many parts of the world, liberating scores of countries from colonial domination. That's not negligible.
It's quite interesting insight you have been sharing. While a lot of things have been given, you spoke about the world standards in different sectors which have been given by UN. But at the same time, there have been challenges across the globe, be it in the area of conflict resolution or be it a case of crisis management. How has UN been able to cope up with these challenges?
Well, I couldn't agree more that there have been some huge challenges. And I think one aspect of it goes back to the fundamental tension between having a global governance system and yet maintaining the power in the hands of member states and not in your global governance structure. So on the one hand, we have at the UN General Assembly, which is like the world parliament where all member states come together and they have an equal voice. But the body was not given any teeth. It wasn't given any authority to actually ensure that its resolutions are implemented. And on the other hand, we have the UN Security Council with its 5 permanent veto-yielding members, which basically represent the global power structure after World War II. And yet they have a legally binding mandate. And so this is quite a big challenge. I mean, we have a central body with teeth that no longer represents the geopolitical realities of today. And as you know very well, India has been very vocal on this, and rightly so. India certainly deserves, to have a permanent seat on the Security Council. Yet reform of the Security Council looks like it's going to take still quite a bit more time. Secondly, you mentioned challenges also in the context of COVID. The world has clearly in the last, several years moved away from multilateralism. And that makes it extremely difficult for the UN to do its job. It's hard for the UN to do its job anyway, but when certain countries, and particularly powerful countries, move away from multilateralism, the UN is really facing a difficult situation, very, very difficult situation. And COVID has put that, up front and center on people's radar screen. Basically, the UN is there for the global public good and can only operate well when countries cooperate together.
Yeah, talking about the challenges, what we have seen this year that the COVID-19 pandemic has really unfolded as a big crisis situation, and it has not only impacted the health resources but also the economic resources of the countries. And the clear message which has been emerging that only if the countries work together and in solidarity, they can fight pandemics of this proportion, as well as they can develop the capacity for future pandemics and other global challenges. How do you see the role of UN in this direction?
Well, I think there are different levels and different dimensions of UN coordination. And I think we've done well on some levels and, of course, much less well on others. Another level, I think the UN has been quite effective. I mean, we have been around the world quietly disseminating PPE kits. Some close to 500 million PPE kits and 200,000 pieces of equipment have been sent to 172 countries. I mean, if some countries are well endowed, they don't need them, but there are many developing countries that didn't have some of the basic equipment or the protective gear. We've reached billions of people in terms of risk mitigation measures. We've supported 123 countries in formulating their national health response plans. We've built coalitions of partners, governments, research institutes, pharmaceutical companies to accelerate the development of a vaccine and to commit that at least some portion of the vaccine would go to high priority groups like health professionals who are at huge risk of contracting the disease, and to the more vulnerable parts of the population.
Yeah, it has been quite a responsible job which UN and other agencies have been doing in different parts of the globe. And you see, some of the lessons from the COVID-19 pandemic which have really emerged over the years, it clearly says that the collaboration is the only way to move forward and how to respond to these challenges like this. But taking on to yet another dimension of climate change, you see, we have been grappling with different issues and the years to come, this is going to be a major challenge for the humanity. Does these shocks like COVID-19 pandemic give any indication how prepared we are to just take care of these aftershocks of climate change in the years to come?
Well, I think many people are seeing COVID-19 almost like a wake-up call for a bigger crisis, which is climate change. And I think if we take, if we rate or rank or grade the world's response to COVID, I think everyone feels that overall we get a failing grade. Some countries managed it well within their borders, but overall in terms of international cooperation, I think we can say that the world failed. And so it doesn't lend itself to a rosy picture when it comes to climate change, which is in a sense almost even harder to tackle because it's a slow-moving crisis. COVID is a fast-moving crisis and it's immediate. We can see the impacts of it immediately. But climate change is still an idea, right, in people's heads. I should correct myself. It's actually not only an idea in people's head, but for most people, it's still an idea in their head. It's actually eating away coastlines. And as you know, there's some islands in the Pacific country that are actually going under. So it is a reality to many, particularly if you take into context, the fierce storms and the increasing intensity of storms, which are attributed partially at least to climate change. So I think overall, it should be a wake-up call. It should be a huge wake-up call, and not only for climate change, but it should be a wake-up call for the next pandemic. In a sense, we could say that COVID, in one sense, despite all the suffering that it's caused, has been relatively mild. A much more virulent kind of virus like Ebola going wild would be absolutely catastrophic. So I hope there's a silver lining out there, that the international community wakes up and realizes that organizations like the UN were established to help countries work together to solve global problems in a peaceful way, at least come together under one roof and work out ways forward where we can find common ground and where we can prepare ourselves for, a kind of the next global crisis that will hit it, be it climate change, be it another pandemic or whatever it may be.
Listeners, we are in conversation with Renata Desalian, UN Resident Coordinator in India on the UN Day. Well, as we are aware, India has been one of the founding members of United Nations and it has played a key role in global issues on the UN platform, be it the UN peacekeeping operations to meet the chloroquine supply needs during the COVID-19 pandemic. As a UN resident coordinator in India, how do you look at India's role at United Nations?
Well, I think India's leadership has been absolutely critical to the UN during its 75 years. Maybe some of your listeners don't know yet, but that many of the basic values of the UN were actually shaped by India. And of course, India was at the founding member of the UN. And India has been one of the most important contributors to UN work in many, many fields. Let's not forget that it was Hansa Mehta, India's delegate to the Human Rights Commission, back in 1948, that ensured that Article 1 of the Universal Declaration reads today, all human beings are created equal, instead of all men are created equal. Because the draft that came across her desk said all men are created equal. And she would have nothing of that. So that's thanks to India.
Yeah.
And ever since the beginning, India has played a defining role in the UN and with the UN. It became the voice of the non-aligned, the voice against apartheid, the economic global south, especially on trade negotiations. It was a champion at the Paris Agreement. And it's the single biggest contributor in cumulative terms to UN peacekeeping around the world today. I think the UN is also deeply grateful to India for the way that it has appropriated the SDGs. I don't know any other country in the world that has a sort of state-by-state benchmarking system for SDG progress, and also created this aspirational districts where special support is needed. And India, before COVID hit us all, but India had made some really striking progress, particularly in poverty reduction, which is, the first of the SDGs. But not only at home, India has also contributed a lot to the SDGs abroad. India contributed 150 million to the UN India Development Partnership Fund, which is all for supporting other developing countries in their work on the Sustainable Development Goals. But India did much more. I mean, with its relationship with the UN, International Day of Yoga is thanks to India, and it's a hugely popular day around the world, and worked on many, many other things. The establishment of the International Solar Alliance, for example, and more recently, the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. These are initiatives that really shows India's commitment to multilateralism, as well as, of course, to the UN.
Yeah.
So, and maybe I can just also say that while everybody was struggling with COVID back in their home countries, India, in spite of the challenges, found ways to provide medical assistance to 133 countries. So that's huge. Thank you, India. That is a huge contribution to solidarity at a moment where we've been relatively disappointed overall with countries coming together. India stood out and actually been extremely generous during this time and stood with other developing countries who may not have as many capabilities as India has to fight the disease. So I think that the multilateralism of the future will definitely be stronger and more effective because of India's contribution. I mean, India's rich history and her culture is infused, with centuries of civilization. And that comes through with her contributions to the UN, contributes a profound understanding and a deep sense of our common humanity.
Yeah, thanks for your really sound words related to the India's role at the world body. Can you share some light on what are the areas in which the UN has been working in India, and especially the areas in which it has yielded tangible results?
Yeah, so the UN development parts of the system have been in India for quite a long time. And we work across all the states in the country and all 112 aspirational districts. Basically, we work under the leadership of the government. Our work is directed around or with SDG goals and targets. And we have a large focus on reduction of poverty, which we measure in a multidimensional manner. So we're not just talking about income. Of course, income is vitally important, but we're also talking about it from social dimensions as well. So basic healthcare, education, nutrition. We're working hand in hand with both the central and state level governments. And also we partner with NGOs and the private sector. I think, right now, most of our work is focused on assisting the government in its response to COVID-19, both on the health front as well as the socioeconomic front. But before that, and even ongoing now, we've done quite a lot of work in support of some of the national development schemes. For example, Ayushman Bharat, Poshan Abhiyan, the Mission Indra Dhanush, National Clean Air Program. So we support these. Basically, we're technical assistance. Most of the agencies in India are technical assistance organizations, which means that they use their technical knowledge. They bring relevant international lessons learned and experience to India so that policymakers can consider whether that's relevant to them or not. And we also bring Indian lessons to the rest of the world. More specifically, I can say, for example, in the health field, as part of the vaccination effort, the measles, rubella elimination efforts, we've helped vaccinate over 300 million children since 2017, working, of course, closely with the Ministry of Health, but also the state health administrations. We've helped the government build its integrated health information platform, which is now operating in 11 states and which covers close to 400 million people. And it basically provides a one-stop shop where you get all of India's health data and information, including public health surveillance of 33 major diseases. We supported with the development of the Jal Jeevan mission guidelines, along with capacity development in all 250,000 gram panchayats across the country. Last year, for example, we were working very closely with the largest micronutrient survey ever conducted anywhere in the world here in India. And we also support activities in the fields of education, science, population, food and agriculture, jobs, labor relations, culture, technology. So we're pretty much a comprehensive development unit here.
Yeah.
And maybe just before I conclude, just mention that we also assist government in response to natural disasters and to mitigate against natural disasters. So, for example, after the terrible 2018 floods in Kerala and Cyclone Fani in Odisha last year, we undertook with the government detailed disaster needs assessment with the state governments, and also provided immediate response assistance. So These are just a few examples of some of the work that we do.
No, you see, of course, both India as well as UN, they have been doing quite a lot of work, especially for the welfare of people in different parts within the country, as well as in different countries across the region. Now, when the India and the UN partnership, they work in tandem, how useful it has been for the countries in the region?
I think many of the work that the UN has done in partnership with the government is extremely relevant to other countries. And UN has been a big promoter of some of the extraordinary creative solutions that India has found to working on difficult problems like poverty reduction. So I think, partly because of the size and diversity of India, where many different countries where maybe just a portion of the size of India, but they certainly can find elements that are similar because of the diversity of India, the experience that comes from India has high resonance in other countries. And I think also perhaps because India is a developing country, sometimes it's easier for developing countries to learn lessons from other developing countries rather than from developed countries. They relate better to other developing countries. And I think the way that India shares its experience is different from a kind of north-south kind of development approach. And that, I think, is very well received by other developing countries.
See, last but not least, a very important aspect has been we have been talking about cooperation. What, according to you, is the future of global cooperation? Is it a reformed UN? Is it plurilateralism or something else?
I think, first of all, when you think about global cooperation and the future of it, it goes back to your question about, what have we learned from COVID-19? And it's not at all clear that, we've learned the lessons that we should have learned from COVID-19. But I'm a born optimist, and I'm convinced that things will eventually get better. I'm just not sure whether they'll get worse before they get better. So I think the UN will remain relevant for some time to come. I think, recently in the 75th anniversary of the UN headquarters undertook a global survey to hear people's opinions, the world body. And a large majority of them, first of all, believe that multilateral solutions are necessary in our day and age and will only become more necessary as we go forward, and that the UN has an important role to play in that. So I think the UN will be there for some time to come. I think it will continue to reform in different ways, maybe not as quickly as we would like, but I think it will still reform. I think other international fora and platforms will continue to grow. They are growing, and they have been growing, almost exponentially in the last 40 years or so. And I think this is fine as long as there are some links in and out of the UN. But it could also lead to something quite chaotic if it's not networked, or if, groups coalesce around polarized positions. One advantage of the UN is that it all happens under one roof. So you have all differences of opinion, different views, different perspectives, but it's all happening under one roof. And that gives an opportunity to sort of chip away at some of the harshest parts of disagreements and try to work together respectfully, even though one might not always agree with one's interlocutor. The UN Secretary General more and more is talking about a networked multilateralism based on strong links and cooperation between global and regional organizations, the IFIs, the international financial institutions, and other global alliances and institutions. So he hasn't actually defined what this networked multilateralism will be. I don't think any of us can really know what it will be. But clearly there's it's almost like a kind of constellations of groups that are working. And my main point is that unless they somehow most of them have clear links in and out of the UN, it could lead to something a bit chaotic. And the last thing the world needs now is more chaos. So I think the UN needs to be strengthened. I think there's certainly space for other kinds of organizations, multilateral organizations, but the UN still is the most legitimate one with all its member states, 193 of them. It's universal membership, it's comprehensive mandate, peace and security, human rights and development, that's unique. And unless that's strengthened, I fear that this burgeoning of other multilateral organizations may lead to something more chaotic. But as I said, I'm an optimist. I think it will all come together. I think humanity will wake up and do the right thing eventually. Yeah. But whether they'll do it after having seen things get worse or not remains to be seen.
Yeah. Listeners, that was Ms. Renata Desalegn, UN Resident Coordinator in India, in conversation with All India Radio on the 75th anniversary of United Nations. It has been a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Atul. A great pleasure for me to talk to you.